Welcome back, space friends, to the third match of Day 5 of the group stages here. I am Zastor, I'm here with Rivey, and for this match we have Fatal Ascension, a team that I fly around with back in the real world, going up against Agony Empire. It's really interesting ship setups here. What do you think about them, Rivey?
Honestly, I think I do like Fatal Ascensions a little bit more, but Agony has brought what is, I think, the heaviest ECM team we've ever seen in the tournament. They've got a Proteus, 4 Rooks, an Aneros, 2 Enyos, a Maulus, and 3 Griffins. And that Proteus does have the gang mod subsystem on, so it's going to have an info war link to increase the strength of those jams. That's a lot of jamming, but very little DPS.
Yeah, and they're also, we see that they have an Oneros here. They're all going to be armor tank too, so even those Rooks, they can't possibly do that much DPS.
Up against them, Fatal Ascension has brought a Mimitar Rush team. Claymore, 3 Sleipnir Scimitar, 2 Kitsunes, a Sentinel, and 3 Sabers. Fairly traditional, similar to what was popular in previous tournaments.
I feel like it's a lot safer to bring the setup that FA brought, having the DPS to actually do some damage. But, I mean, maybe they'll end up all jammed. Let's see what happens here.
Now, Agony is running with damage drones because they don't have a whole lot of damage in the first place, so they really need it. We haven't seen drones dropped yet by Fatal Ascension, but hopefully on their part they've got damage drones because they're going to need it to be able to apply damage once they're all jammed.
And we see jamming effects on every single one of the FA ships. So it's just going to be rolling the dice, seeing if all of those jams stick, whether or not any DPS actually gets through to the Agony Empire's setup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think really if a good ECM team needs to have a lot of damage. I'm in the camp that ECM teams can be very strong, but you need to be able to do the damage to allow the fight to move quickly, because the longer ECM teams go, the more chances there are that they're going to miss a jam and die.
And there goes Fatal Ascension Scimitar. That's it's going to be a very painful blow right off the bat. And Agony Empire's jams must be sticking because they're taking almost no damage from the FA team.
There's been damage applied to the Griffin, but it's an armor tank Griffin, so that shield damage isn't going to really matter, and it's being tanked fine. And there goes a Kitsune. This is a lot of jamming, and it looks like nothing's applying right now.
And as FA loses ships, it becomes easier for Agony to keep the rest of them jammed because they don't have to spread up their jammers as much.
It's worth noting that these two teams came at almost opposite beacons, so they were quite a ways away from each other. The Agony team warped their damaged ships, which is basically just the Proteus and the 2 Enyos, in at about 20, everything else in at range. And there goes another Saber down.
Agony Empire is going to make liars out of you and I both, Rivey. Every time I say I feel safer about one setup than another, they prove me wrong.
I will say, though, I did pick Agony ahead of time in this match. But yeah, I'm surprised that they're doing so well that this is actually, this is a excessive real use of ECM. Now, do you know what actually is making me realize why this is going the way it is? I'm zooming in on one of the Sleipnirs for Fatal Ascension, and I'm not seeing an ECCM effect.
Oh, that is a very poor choice going into this one. I mean, I guess you never really know if you should waste a mid on ECCM or not, but
Zagdol from Fatal Ascension has left the boundary with his Claymore and died.
I guess he just gave up.
Yeah, so Zagdol has left the arena, and that's really going to be the nail in the coffin. They have taken down one Griffin now, but at this point it's going to be very difficult. As more and more of the ships from Fatal Ascension go down, the jams can be concentrated into fewer and fewer ships. Really, ECM, I've said this before, I'll say it again, is the kind of thing that if you're prepared for it, you can almost always beat it. An ECM team is not the best against a prepared opponent, but against an opponent who hasn't put in the thought of how is this team going to beat ECM. You have to look at every team you have, think, how is it going to beat ECM? If you haven't answered that question, you're going to end up like Fatal Ascension and dying to an ECM team that does very little DPS.
I think a lot of people don't like to put ECCM on their ships because if you go up against a brawling team, all of that preparation that you put in, all the ECCM modules are completely useless now because you just wasted a slot.
And now, one of the reasons they may felt that they needed those mid slots is these are ancillary shield boosted Sleipnirs. So they will be able to have some tank even without the Scimitar on the field anymore. But I think once they run out of the charges in that booster, once they have to reload, they're probably still going to go down. These Rooks aren't going to do a lot of DPS because they're armor tanked. Shield tank Rooks I really love because they do quite a bit of DPS, about the same as the Cerberus. Armor tanked, not as much, but that combined with the Proteus and the Enyos will still wear down this team eventually.
And it's going to just be a slow death for Fatal Ascension.
We got another of the ships for Fatal Ascension, a Saber, down for that boundary violation.
Yep, and the Kitsune going down to guns. I wonder if they were just leaving the arena on purpose out of frustration, or
just to give a special gift to CCP Streets.
Yeah, just
because I'm sure he appreciates it.
That figure's hovering over that big red button. He loves to push it.
Yeah, I think that's really, if this team for Fatal Ascension had brought ECCM on everything, then I think they may have had a very good chance against this.
When I first looked at it, I just didn't think they would have the DPS to deal with the tank on all the Fatal Ascension Sleipnirs, but I guess you're not getting any reps from the Scimitar then.
Yeah, and these Sleipnirs are going to be able to tank this whole team with the ancillary booster, but once the booster has to reload, they're eventually going to get worn down. And since points don't matter, even if they survive, all Agony has to do is sit outside of range for most of the ships, jam them, and survive the match, and they've won.
And they're of course saving those Sleipnirs for last because they know that the ASB will just tank everything.
Yep. It's an interesting fit. We're seeing this Proteus as both a brawling and gang boosting Proteus. It did have the gang boost subsystem, so it's giving those info war boosts to make the jams even better, but it's also right up in the front lines doing damage. So they're trying to make best use of the damage ships they do have, which is smart.
Yeah, they're doing a good job now. All the Fatal Ascension ships starting to take damage. That Saber looks like he fled far enough out that he's going to stay alive, but there's really no point at this. Denying him points isn't going to make a big difference. The Agony Empire is going to win.
To be fair to Fatal Ascension, it's quite possible that these Sleipnirs did have the sensor backup arrays, the low slot ECCM modules.
Yeah.
But because there's no effect for those, so we can't see it until the kill mails show up. But the problem with those is they don't give as big of a boost, and you can't overload them. Being able to overload the ECCM is a huge advantage against an ECM team. You can all overload together to get the damage through to take down those ships early and cause the House of Cards to fall apart.
Exactly.
And not having that really cripples you.
Yeah, just getting a couple of those ECM ships, even just the frigates, if that's all you can get, at the beginning of the match can be massive because there's so many less mids that are going to be hitting you. But other than that one Griffin, Fatal couldn't do anything.
Yep. And they were probably also counting on having those two Kitsunes to counter jam some of the ships for Agony Empire. Having Kitsunes is a pretty good defense against something like Rooks, because the Kitsunes can lock faster. And if they can get that early jam, you put a lot of Caldari jammers on the Kitsunes, get the early jam and get them jammed first. The problem is Agony had a bunch of Griffins, which lock just about as fast, and you just can't jam everything. So.
Right. When it becomes an ECM race, you might like those Kitsunes, but when every single ship that Agony Empire brought was jamming, there was completely overwhelming. And they did good with their target calling. They managed to spread out all of their jams. They weren't double jamming anyone, and they must have connected with most of them because they took almost no damage right at the beginning.
Yeah. It's a good use of tactics on their part. They brought in their tacklers up front so that they wouldn't have to worry about getting all their ships behind the E-War ships hit right away, slow down the opposing ships, and it did the job for them.
Don't you think bringing E-War is risky, though? Because if you bring a brawling setup, you can at least hope to get a few ships killed and just hope things swing your way. But if you bring ECM, it's like an all-or-nothing kind of gamble.
I think bringing E-War along with a lot of DPS is not as risky, because that allows you to win even if you don't get full gems and everything.
Your bets a little bit.
Bringing it like this is somewhat risky. If they came up against a team that was a single race team with a lot of ECCM stacked, then they'd be in a lot of trouble.
Well, Fatal Ascension does have mostly Mimitar ships set up, so they may have been catching off-racial jammers from Agony Empire if they didn't have tons of Mimitar jammers with them.
One interesting question will be whether or not Agony actually had any spies that were observing Fatal Ascension's test. Yeah. Fatal Ascension was doing tests alongside their CFC bros, Goons and Tests, a lot of the time, and testing on Sissy on the test server, and if they got eyes on him from Agony and saw that they like to use Mimitar setups, they could have bias their jammers heavily towards Mimitar.
That's true, but I think if you were going to pick one race to bring heavy jammers for, it'd be Mimitar.
It'd be Mimitar, maybe Caldari, and then Galente.
Yeah, we've definitely seen more Mimitar than anything else, at least in the prelims of this year.
Yeah, people do tend to bring fewer Amar jammers, which is one of the reasons that Amar setups is another way to counter ECM. A good Amar setup is very hard for an ECM team to be because no one's going to bring a lot of Amar jammers.
Right. And we haven't seen too many Amar ships at all, but we did see Oracles last match.
We did see Oracles last match. We've seen some Legion teams from Dead Terrace are going to be coming up soon.
And an Absolution team won in the prelims also.
Yes, that was that Choke Point? Anyways, there was some good use of Amar ships in the past. They're still not very popular compared to the other races though in the tournament.
Yeah, and this year it seems like more love was given to Galente with the different patch changes than anything else, but still not seeing a whole pile of Galente here in
We are seeing those Enyos, which are excellent, excellent ships. They do about as much DPS as you can get for 4 points. It's a great use of those points when you need DPS. When you really need to get just the most DPS possible out of the remaining points after you've filled out your jammers, Enyos are a good choice. So that was an excellent move by Agony. As we see this Enyo slowly breaking down the tank of these Sleipnirs, the last Sleipnir. Even the Griffins are right in there with their rockets, doing their token damage.
Yeah.
Actually,
that Griffin DPS is going to be the difference maker here.
I think that's an autocannon Griffin.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
got to whore the kill mail. Gotta get a little bit of DPS in there.
Yeah, the auto Griffin in there doing its part. It's like 10 DPS or whatever. Every bit counts. And that Sleipnir is now dropping into structure and goes down. And congratulations to Agony Empire taking down Fatal Ascension with an incredibly powerful jamming setup.
Another completely one-sided win. It's the third really one-sided win we've had out of 3 matches. So congratulations to Agony Empire, and we will send you guys back to the studio and have fun.